You've got your technical skills under control. Congratulations on it. That's fantastic. Now let's talk about who's running your company. Okay? The person who's in charge, either as a manager or as the CEO or something like that. Quick question, what's the story in their technical skills? In some companies, fantastic, they're wonderful, they're very skilled, very talented, and stuff like that. More often than not, what you'll find is that the people who are running the show are not necessarily the most technically gifted people. Well, that doesn't seem very fair, does it? It seems as though if you have the best technical skills, you should be in charge, right? Well, life doesn't sort of work out that way. There's a different set of criteria that determines how your career is going to go. Now, really, it all boils down to one thing. And the question is how good of a communicator are you? Okay? So inside, you have great ideas. Okay? Fantastic solutions to problems. Innovative, out-of-the-box thinking. All that stuff is in there. Okay? Great ideas every single day. If you don't tell anybody, it's not going to do any good. Okay? Your ability to share your ideas with one person is good. With two people is better. With a group is fantastic. With the whole company is even better. Okay? So it really doesn't matter if you're using it at work, if you're using it at a church situation, or if you're part of some other organization, such as the IEEE. Okay? It doesn't matter. But if you've got great ideas, we've got to find a way to get them out of you and into other people's heads. Okay? Ultimately, public speaking is what it's all about. That is the skill. Anybody ever take a class of public speaking in school? Excellent. And how did that turn out? Best class ever?
Yeah, that's good.
You made it through it, right? Okay,
yeah.
That's cool. It's interesting because they do a survey every year of Americans. The question, what do you fear the most? Right? You've heard about this, right? And everything's on the list. And number one on the list, number one thing that people fear the most is public speaking. Which is weird, because on the list they also have snakes and death. Okay? Somehow public speaking is beating all that out. It's like, well, okay, I got it. Okay. So it's not something to be feared, and it's actually a very powerful tool. I want to leave one quick thought in your head on this one. What it is think about the people that you spend your time with. Think about your technical colleagues, your friends who are technically gifted, and the quick question I have for you is, are they any good at giving speeches? Generally the answer is no. And in fact, if somebody came and said, hey, look, I need somebody to give a speech, would they put their hand up in the air and say, yeah, I'd like to do it? Generally speaking, the answer is no. Most people would take a step back, right? So if you could develop this skill, if you could make it so that you were comfortable giving a speech, that you felt you knew everything that you had to do to prepare and deliver an effective speech, all of a sudden you have a skill or a talent that most of the people that you work with, most of the people that you interact with, don't have. Okay? And so I don't care who you're working for now or who you're going to work for next, that's the kind of skill that can follow you through. So something to think about. So I appreciate you spending time with me tonight. Let me ask you a real quick question here. If I could share one thing with you, I want to leave my mark on you, that's what the picture's all about. If I could share one thing with you that you could take back to the office or take back to your group and use starting tomorrow, would you say that your time was well spent? Okay. So if I was able to share two things with you tonight that you were able to take back, that would be 100% more than you're expecting, right? Right? All right, so we got agreement. We'll double check at the tail end, but I think I'm on to something here. All right. So here's a quick question. How valuable are you to your company? I had a good performance review last year. They seem to be pleased. They've let other people go, but I'm still there. We measured this in a whole bunch of different ways. Okay. Ultimately, your company employs you because of what's between your ears, right? They need your ability to solve problems. Well, okay, that's fine. But if you think of great ways to solve problems and you don't tell anybody, then the way the rest of the company is going to view you is just another cog in the machine, right? Hey, we can give him work, he does the work, he turns it in, it's good to go. That's fine. But I can replace you, right? I can replace cogs. That's not a big deal. I can get somebody else to come and do that. Now, however, if they see you as a person who's always coming up with ideas, who always has novel ways of doing things, who's always put your hands up and say, hey, I've got a great idea, let me tell you about it. Okay. Your idea doesn't even have to be right all the time, right? But they see you as a source of innovation, source of ideas. Think outside the box, we need to be more innovative. All this sort of sounds familiar, and it's sort of the mantra that we're hearing in businesses. If you're quiet and you sit in your cube, head down, and do your work, and nobody ever hears from you, should there be a need to trim the ranks, get rid of people, man, your name's coming up, okay? It's like, what does he do? I have no idea what he does. He's always good attendance. He's always here, but I have no idea what he does. You know, your name's on the list. But man, if you're the guy who's coming up with the ideas, if you're the one who's always saying, listen, I've got some thoughts on what we can do, all of a sudden your value in the eyes of the people that you work for goes up. If nothing else, just because you're louder than everybody else, right? They know you, they know that you're talking, they know that you have ideas and stuff like that. If you can get the ideas that are in your head out and into the head of everybody else that you're working, all of a sudden you become a lot more valuable. And how do we do that? Well, we give presentations, right? Now, you've sat through presentations, and I've sat through presentations. And unfortunately, as engineers, we have a nasty little habit. What happens, if we're asked to do a presentation, we'll go out and we'll do a lot of research, right? We'll get all sorts of great information. And then we'll go to our audience, and we'll share all of that information with the audience. Man, we won't leave anything behind. We're going to put it all in their brains, right? You've sat through those presentations before. Oh my God, he's got more. How many slides does it look like he has? 80. Oh no. Quick, call me. Come up with the reason why I have to leave, because I'm not staying for this whole thing. Yeah, we can overload our audiences, right? And the audiences just walk out of a presentation like that wounded. It's not like they picked up any information. They just got burdened. You know, been there, done that, sat through those. You know, hey, an engineer's giving a presentation. Oh, great, let's go. That's going to be fun. No, unfortunately, that's not the way it is. But we're going to solve that problem tonight. It's with a great deal of shame, I confess, this is a slide that I was using in the early 90s. Okay? So I got to own up to my own feelings, okay? There was a good reason for it, okay? Now, I see some gray hairs in the audience, so I think I'm going to be on safe ground here. Kids, before there was laptops and projectors, we used to print slides on plastic. Plastic was called vellums. And in a standard office, that was the most expensive office supply they had. So when you got asked to give a presentation, you'd go to the secretary and you'd say, I'm going to give a presentation. I need 10 vellums. And she'd get out the key and she'd go over to the cabinet. She'd open up the cabinet, she'd give you the 10 vellums, and then she'd lock the cabinet and put the key away, and you'd go off and prepare your presentation. And dear God, if it turned out that you needed 12, you were going to have to go back and go through that whole process again. And you weren't going to do that if you possibly could. So you were going to pack as much on each slide as you possibly could and just talk to it during the presentation. And that's what I was doing. And so that's what I saw people doing. I learned from them, and that's what I did. Great, fabulous. And this unfortunately is the end result of it. Oh, the shame of it all. So anyway, I was working for a little startup at this point in time, and we had a salesperson. His name was Dan. And Dan was the best salesperson in the company. And the people who were running the company said, man, Dan's selling more than all of our other salespeople combined. Jim, what we need you to do is go out with Dan when he's making presentations to customers, and we want you to videotape him. Notice the size of the videotape. Okay. We want you to videotape him, okay? And then what we want you to do is make like a single tape of that, and we're going to give that tape to all of our salespeople, and they can watch Dan make his presentations, and they can learn from what he's doing. Sounds like a good plan. So, bright, competent, skillful engineer, I'm playing the role of videographer, right? Okay, so I got to go along with Dan for like about a month as he went to customer after customer. And man, customers loved Dan, right? So he'd get up. We had a deck of slides about yay thick, super technical, talked about our product and why it was the best, and we compared all the different parts and how we built the product and why it was really reliable. And it's a great deck. I mean, it looked like this. But anyway, gave Dan the deck, and he'd go clicking through the deck and stuff like that. And man, the audiences loved him. So I had the stack of videotapes that I then had to sort of boil down into one. And I was there. I saw him give the presentations, but I still didn't understand why he was the best salesperson that we had. So then I started working my way through the individual presentations. And it dawned on me after a while that Dan wasn't using the slides. So Dan was putting the slides on the machine, and he was clicking through the slides. But he wasn't talking about what was on the slide. He was having conversations with the audience. He was telling stories. He was connecting with them. He was telling them about why the product was so good, but it had nothing to do with what was on the slide. I was like, oh my God. He's really good. He's good despite the super tech deck we gave him. I said, okay, Dan, you're my mentor, man. I want to learn how to do this presentation stuff from you. And Dan was an excellent mentor. He stopped me from doing things like this. He showed me how he did his thing. And I went on to work at other companies, and there's been other Dans in my career and stuff like that. But they stopped me from making mistakes like this, and they shared with me a much better way to communicate and connect with audiences. Now, this is my daughter. She's going on 15, so feel sorry for me. Okay. Now, the reason I have her picture up here tonight is I want to talk about the audiences that you're going to be making presentations to. I would argue that the average age of your audience is probably going to be closer to her than the other end of the spectrum. Remember, the baby boomers in the next few years are all going to be eligible for retirement, right? So they're going to be rolling out. You're going to be making your presentations, arguably, to younger and younger kids who are just coming out of college, right? Well, what does that actually mean? What it means is you can't be boring. What's every single one of those kids going to be showing up with? Right? And your presentation had better be more interesting than what it is apparently the pigs have stolen the eggs from the birds. I don't know if you guys heard about this. And the birds are flinging them. Well, it's fascinating. I can spend hours doing this. And see, you're competing with the birds and the pigs. And you'd better be more interesting than that. Okay? And I'm on like level 43. It's getting tough. All right? So, my daughter, we got her a cell phone like 2 Christmases ago. And I'm an engineer, right? My wife came to me and said, it's time for her to get a cell phone. And I said, no, it's not. We don't pick her up at school. She's not involved in sports. There's no need for a cell phone. My wife said, stop. It's social. Get her a cell phone. All right. End of conversation. So be it. She got her cell phone. So I think it was what? It was like October of last year. I was paying the bill. And thank God, we're on an unlimited texting plan. But the thought did cross my mind. I wonder how many text messages then a 14-year-old could send in a month. Would anybody like to guess? 4,000 is good, but it's higher than that.
Really?
Yeah.
20,000.
Yeah, a little bit lower than that. You're close, though. Let's take a look and see what we're talking about here. Answer is 9,400 in a month. Now, I need to point something out here. I'm a reasonably good dad. Not perfect, but I'm a reasonably good dad, which means that my daughter gets up early in the morning. She's groggy. She's out of it. She gets packed off to school. At school, in theory, they can't use their cell phones. We'll have to see about that one. She comes home. She's got homework to do. There's dinner. And relatively quickly, I try to pack her off to bed. She doesn't have a ton of time to be texting. She apparently makes the most of her available time. I did some back of the envelope calculations, and it turns out she's got to be cranking out a text message roughly every minute and a half to make those numbers. Okay? Now that's the same type of person that's sitting in your audience, right? So you're competing for their attention. So your presentation had better be pretty well constructed. It had better be interesting, or at least interesting enough to hold their attention. All right, so every presentation that we give is a certain type of presentation, and you've got 4 choices here. When you're putting a presentation together, you need to decide what type of presentation you want to make. The first one is the informative presentation. Anybody who's been to college knows exactly what the informative presentation is. The guy who's giving the presentation has knowledge that you don't have. He's going to share his knowledge with you. Whip out your pen and your paper and start writing it down. Right? So knowledge being transferred, and it's a one-way transfer. There's the demonstrative speech. Now this is a speech in which the person has something, a device, a piece of software, something like that, and they say this thing is going to fix your problem, and they're going to show you how that thing can be applied to your problem and what the end result is. Who was the guy who died? It was Billy something. Billy Hayes. OxyClean, right? I mean, if you've ever seen an OxyClean commercial, you know exactly what we're talking about here. Hey, this is my, blueberry soap shirt, and I stick it in my OxyClean, and look, I take it out, and it's fantastic. So go ahead and order now, right? So effectively, we see this a lot with software products, generally, right? So we've got a new proposal tool. I'm going to show you how to enter a proposal. I'm going to show you what the output of the proposal tool is, whatever. The other type of speech that there is the persuasive speech, which is also known as the motivational speech, right? So in a persuasive speech, the speaker has a view of the world They see the world in a particular way, which is probably different from the way you currently see the world. So in their speech, they're going to explain to you why the way they see the world is really the way you should be seeing the world. Right? They're going to try and convince you of that. And if they can do that, then at the end of their speech, what they're going to try and do is convince you to take some sort of action. Okay? That's the whole purpose of the persuasive speech. And the fourth type is the entertaining speech, arguably the most enjoyable speech, right? Generally speaking, the purpose of an entertaining speech is really just to make you feel good. Make you laugh, make you chuckle, make you feel better. If you've ever been in a high stress-filled environment, stuff like that, man, that's the kind of speech that you want to hear, right? Just designed to get everybody to relax. So when you're building your next speech, the question is, which one do you want to do? Well, you can pick one, of course, right? I'm just going to do an informative speech. But generally speaking, that's not the way it works. You generally want to combine all these. So in an engineering speech, I would argue that roughly half of your speech is going to be informative. You have information that you're going to be sharing with your audience. Okay? A portion of it is going to be persuasive. You're giving the presentation for a reason. You want more money, you want more staffing, you want more time, you want something, and that's why you're going through the effort of giving the presentation. It's entirely possible that you're going to have to do a demonstration of something. We've made progress. Let me show you how far we've come. Let me show you where the gaps are. Let me show you what our next step is going to be. Okay? If you give a presentation like this, it's a fairly good engineering presentation. But there's one thing missing, right? This is a pretty damn dry presentation. What you need to do is add just a little bit of humor. Right? Make your audience smile, make your audience chuckle. Make it a little bit better than the standard engineering presentation. Alright. Now, I'm going to give you a presentation tonight. I'm going to share a lot of information with you. My concern is that you're not going to remember it. I've sat through a lot of these presentations. So right now, I'm going to solve that problem. I'm going to plant important information in your head. But before we do that, I need you all to stand up. Just for a moment. I'm not going to make you introduce yourself to anybody. I promise you. I just need you to stand up. Because I'm going to tell you a story. And while you're standing, I need you to picture the story that I'm telling you in your mind. Okay? Can you do that? Is that acceptable? It's a quick story. It won't be that hard. All right. I want you to picture yourself standing here. I want you to look down at your feet. You're not wearing any shoes. Wiggle your toes. Wiggle your toes. Can you see it? Can you see it? Okay. In your hand, you're holding a binder. You know what a binder looks like. It's a big binder. It's stuffed with paper. I mean, this thing is like overfilled with paper. And on the top, it says plan. Can you see it? I think it's blue. By the way, it's a blue binder. It says plan on it. You're standing over your feet. Remember, you're not wearing any shoes. And you drop the binder. Ow! That's got to hurt, right? Okay, the next thing I want you to do is look at your knees. Can you see your knees? We've replaced your kneecap. We put one of those, you know those little plastic slide-in, slide-out drawers? You know those little, they're lousy, they're really crappy quality. But we've replaced both of your knees with those. But it's very convenient, because now you can reach down to your knee and slide out that little drawer, store pens, pencils, rubber bands, whatever it is. Very easy for organizing. You're now very organized, because you can reach down to your knee, open up your little organizer drawer, and be good to go. Can you picture that? You seeing your knees? Excellent, fantastic. Now I want you to think about the table that you ate at during your entire childhood, where you had breakfast and lunch and dinner. Can you picture that table? Fantastic. What we've done is we found that table. Good news, found the table. We cut a hole in the middle, and we put you in the middle, and we attached it to you. So now that table is attached to you. Wherever you walk, that table is going to come with you. It's going to lock against the doors. I don't know how the bathroom's going to work out, but we'll worry about that later on, okay? So anytime you have to create something, you've got the table to do it on. You can lay your papers out, you lay your pens out. It's all right there. You might even put a laptop on there. That'd be fantastic. But you've got this table that goes with you everywhere that allows you to create things. Can you see this in your mind? Okay, fantastic. Now all of a sudden, you feel something on your back. And so you're going to turn, you're going to look at your back. What you're going to see is little tiny NFL players. I mean, they're only 2 or 3 inches tall. But they seem to be really mad. We're not sure why. They seem to be demonstrating. Okay, they're like walking around in a circle. And unfortunately, all the NFL players are wearing their cleats on your back. Okay? And they're walking in a circle in the back. And that cannot possibly feel good. I apologize for that. Now I'm talking about your shoulders. On your shoulders there's a big red curtain that goes from one end of your shoulders to the other end of your shoulders, okay? You cannot see behind the curtain, but you can hear what sounds like actors. There must be actors behind the curtain. It sounds like they're rehearsing. They're going to put on some sort of play or something like that, but you can hear the noises of them getting ready to do something because they're rehearsing behind the curtains. Can you hear that? Cool. Now, this is the tough one, guys. Stuck on the end of your nose is a present. It's a little gift, so that's good, like a ring box or something like that. But unfortunately, it has been super glued to the end of your nose. And you know what happens when there's something on the end of your nose, right? What that means is that your eyes keep going to, it's so annoying because they keep looking at it. Because you have this little present super glued to the end of your nose. Last one, last image, you ready for it? So you're standing here, and then you just happen to look up at the ceiling, and there's a hole that's been cut in the ceiling. And all of a sudden, out of that hole comes lots and lots of change. We're talking pennies and dimes and nickels and quarters. And you know, the dimes aren't so bad. But man, those nickels really hurt because it's just pouring. It's coming down, it's hitting you on the head, bouncing off your shoulder, and it's starting to build up a big pile all around you. All right, that's my story. Let's make sure it's stuck in your head. So real quickly, I'm standing here. What am I holding? I'm holding a plier. And what does it say on it? It says plier. And what do you do with it? Ow, that's going to hurt. Now, I want to do, what's going on with your knee? It's got a little what? Drawer. It allows you to be organized, right? Fantastic. And you're standing right in the middle of a what? Table. And that allows you to do what? Create, right? Lots of creation. That's fantastic. I'm looking on my back. What do I have on my back? I've got little... And what are they doing? They're demonstrating. They're not happy. We have no idea. It's not getting paid enough. Fantastic. Okay, that's all good. All right, now I'm looking at your shoulders. What's on your shoulders? There's a what? Curtain. And behind the curtain is what? Actors. And what are they doing? They're rehearsing, right? Okay, they get right. That's all cool. That's all right. Okay, now stuck on the end of my nose is a it's a present. Oh man, that's so annoying because that's also going to be sort of heavy too. Isn't it great? And then I look up at the ceiling. There's a hole. And what comes pouring out of the hole? Change. Sit down. I appreciate you putting up with me. Clearly, I'm very discouraged. But that's okay, because I'm giving the presentation. I get to do whatever I want. Cool. The reason that we went through that is because to create a speech that's powerful and effective, it turns out there's a process for that. And the process I like to call the Clear Blue presentation system. And it consists of all of this stuff, okay? Basically, from left to right, from plan to change, is the complete system. So you start with how you create the actual speech itself, you worry about how you actually practice it, how you actually deliver it, and then what you do actually after the presentation itself. It's a complicated system. What I'd really like you to do is memorize it, but surprise, you already memorized it. Plan, sounds sort of familiar. Organize, create, demo, rehearse, present, change. You know what's so cool? You couldn't forget those 7 steps if you tried. That's the story stuck in your head. Now, if we had more time, we could go over each step and I could share with you exactly what you do for different parts. We don't actually have that much time tonight. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the core parts of the system. Okay? So remember, just giving a good presentation isn't enough. You actually have to build an effective speech. You have to practice the speech, and then you have to deliver it in a way that captures the attention of your audience and gets them to do what you want them to do. So, going over a presentation system can actually get a little bit dry. So instead, let's think about, we're going to give you an assignment. Let's say that you have a new boss. Yay! Maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, I'm not sure. You've got a new boss. New boss, you're going to fix things now, man. He can fix all the stuff that's wrong with your department, your company, whatever the story is. So you go into his office and you say, oh, I'm here to tell you everything that's wrong. He says, fantastic. He said, I want to hear your ideas. He said, I'll tell you what. I'm going to pull together all the senior managers next week. Why don't you come and make a presentation to us about how we can make our department better? Uh-oh. That didn't go so well, did it? He said, in that presentation, I'd like to do, first off, you're going to have to convince me that there's a problem, because I got a lot of other stuff to work on. You got to convince me that we actually have to spend some time on this. Secondly, you know, complaining without offering a solution is just bitching, right? We don't need any of that right there. So give me a solution to the problem. And finally, as long as we're doing that, figure out what we need to agree on. How are we going to actually solve this particular problem? So do that in your presentation, and off you go. Oh, okay. Well, how hard could that be? So that's the challenge. Let's see if we can apply this Clear Blue system to maybe creating a presentation to do that. So, the very first thing we want to do is plan our presentation. Now, how do you create presentations today? Hey, I need to give a presentation next Wednesday. Can you go do it? You go back to your desk, fire up the laptop, open up PowerPoint, look at a blank slide and go, okay, what should the first slide be, right? I'm going to say, stop! Don't do that. Step away from the laptop, okay? It's not about the slides, it's about the presentation, okay? First thing you have to do is figure out what kind of speech you're going to give. Okay, you've got 4 different types that you possibly could give. Okay, for the type of speech that we're going to be giving here, I would say it'd probably be a mixture of informing and persuading. Demonstrating, probably don't want to entertain. This isn't the right time for that. So it's going to be a combination of a couple of different approaches, which is perfect. That's exactly what you want to do. Okay, this could be the first slide in our deck, and all it's designed to do is be a placeholder. Right? It's not designed to communicate any information. Too often, when I see engineering presentations, I see the answer presented on the first slide. You show me the answers to the presentation on the first slide, I'll walk in, I take a look at it, go, whatever, and I'm out of there. Thank you. I'm not going to hang around. I'm not going to hang around for an hour. Have you basically tell me what was on the cover slide, right? So the whole purpose of the cover slide of any presentation is simply, look, it's just going to be up there while people are sitting down. It's just get them talking, get them chatting, get them going, but don't give away whatever the big payoff of your presentation is. All right. One thing that I think a lot of us don't quite realize is when you're giving a presentation, there's nothing magical about the information that you have. You probably don't have any secret information that the people in your audience couldn't go out and get themselves, right? The reason that the people have come to hear you give the presentation is because they want to hear how you've taken the information that you collected and how you organized it, how you processed it, what the conclusions that you came to. Remember, they've got all the information. That's not it. They want to get the results of your processing. You spent the hours, days, months, years, whatever, processing through it, and you've reached some sort of conclusion. That's what they've come for. So don't bore them necessarily with the data, okay, because they probably have most of that. But instead, share with them sort of your methodology and your processing as you went through it. Now, if you go out to any good Barnes & Noble bookstore, what you'll find is that you can pick up a book on how to give a speech. And they'll all tell you the same thing. What they're going to tell you is when you give a speech, you want to start out with a powerful opening. You want to reach out and grab your audience's attention from the get-go. Okay? Well, that sounds good. Now, they'll also tell you the same thing is that you want to close your speech with a powerful close. Because remember, the last words out of your mouth are going to be the ones that are ringing around in their head as they drive home. All right, that sounds very powerful, too. Unfortunately, what those books won't tell you is what the heck to do at the middle. And that's the bulk of your speech, right? Well, I'm going to tell you exactly what you should do. The whole purpose of the middle part of your presentation is to get to the end. Okay? So it's where you present the reason for your conclusion. It was Colonel Mustard in the library with a candlestick. Okay? It's like a detective novel. You've got to build up to the end, and that's what the middle's about. And the reason I'm sharing this with you, because I know you, just like me, you've sat through many engineering presentations that were too long and filled with too much stuff, right? So when you're putting your presentation together, what you need to do is to be constantly asking yourself, does this have anything to do with the conclusion that I'm going to reach? I would like to have more staff, I would like to have more budget, I would like to have more time. Whatever you're trying to have happen because you give this presentation, if you're going to present this piece of information, this fact, this result, does it have anything to do with the conclusion? If it doesn't, then don't present it. Chop it out of your presentation. It doesn't belong, right? That's how you determine what goes in and what goes out of your presentation. Only if it relates to the close. All right, so how are we going to organize this little speech we're getting ready to give to our brand new boss? Well, in a lot of different ways we can do it. So we gave it a title, Solving Our Engineering Problem. Now, why did we do that? Engineering, the title of your presentation is probably just about as important as the actual presentation itself. Because there's a lot of people out there who will get that email that says, hey, come to my presentation, titled whatever, and they got to make a decision about whether they come or whether they don't come. When I called it this, our engineering problem, I used the word problem on purpose What happens when an engineer sees the word problem? It's got to be solved. It's got to be solved. So what are they going to start doing? They're going to start coming up with solutions. Oh, you're having a problem with the engineering department. I will come and share my thoughts on how you can solve your problem. Oh, fabulous. Come on down, right? I don't even care if you come that way. Just come, right? So it's a very powerful way to get people to come. All right. So basically break it up into additional 3 steps. We'll talk about it today, how our engineering department is. We'll talk about what other departments want to get from the engineering department. And then we'll wrap it up talking about, I don't know, Six Sigma or some other fabulous sort of solution for what we're trying to do. And that's the big finish, right? That's what we want to get them to rally behind and say, yes, Six Sigma is exactly what we should do. We'll just go from there or something like that. So that's just, basic outline for a presentation that would work. It's a good engineering presentation. All right. So now we're going to talk about actually putting together maybe the slides, because we always use slides, right? Here's an interesting idea. I just want you guys to kick it around for a brief moment. Every presentation you go to today, the presenter uses slides, correct? Pretty much? Pretty much? So here's just something fun to put in the back of your pocket. Give a presentation without slides. It's great. It freaks everybody out. I'm sorry, are there slides? Can I get a copy of the slides? Are there some slides someplace that I can... No, there's no slides. So they're like, oh, well, I guess I'll stare at you the whole presentation. Great. That's what I want to happen. I will do this every once in a while. It will freak people out. But if it's not that long of a presentation or if it doesn't have that much technical information, it's a great way to it'll get everybody's attention. And they will talk about it for the next week. It's like, yeah, sort of shook me up. Now, another interesting thing is, should you give your slides away to people? Should you, hey, here's a copy of my slides. The answer is no. You don't want to do that. So I'm going to recommend that instead you have something else that you hand out to your audience. Don't give them a copy of your slide deck. Because if they get the slide deck without your explanation of the slides, first off, they can just grab it and leave, right? And they won't really get the message that you're trying to get across. Create a one-sheet for them, maybe with some bullet points, the key bullet points, or maybe what your key recommendation on, something like that, and give that to them. Their need to hold on to something will be taken care of. Or do something like that, but don't just give them the whole deck of slides. And by the way, does anybody ever really take a look at the deck of slides you give them? They might leaf through it once now, it's just going to go on the shelf and eventually be on clean out week, it hits the, So you can have a lot more effectiveness if you instead go and give it to them. Now, as engineers, we all sort of love PowerPoint. We know how PowerPoint works. Maybe we even know how to do animations. We can make things fly in and flash and get bigger and smaller. And because we're engineers. We read the manual. We know how the damn thing works, right? But here's the story. When you're giving a presentation and your slides are over here, who's the star of the show? Is it your slides or you? It's all about me, thank you very much. It's not my damn slides. It's me, 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 me. So when you're looking, you should be looking at me. You should not be looking at my slides. My slides are there to complement what I'm saying. So you can glance at my slides, yes, but then you bring your attention back to me. Okay? That's the most important thing. So if you pack your slides with text or do stuff like that, you're taking your audience's eyes off of you, and you are the star of the show. So you don't want that to happen. Now also, if you put a lot of text on your slide, you're assuming that your audience can multitask. Every single study that we've ever seen says no, people can't multitask. Now, I must confess, I used to think that I could multitask. Yeah, I saw the studies. They were wrong. Okay, because I was better than everybody else. I used to think that until about 2 years ago. I was going off to a doctor's appointment. It was a new doctor, so I wasn't really quite sure who it was. But that's okay. I'm an engineer. I got a GPS. Programmed it in, stuck it on the dash. I was going down Veterans Expressway. I was also on a conference call. Hands-free, so it's all good. Hands-free. Unfortunately, I was sort of leading the conference call. So I was talking. I wasn't just listening past. I was actually driving the conference call. I was also driving the car. Late, you know how that goes. Late, far left lane, 70, 80 miles an hour, something like that. But I'm smart because I'm an engineer. So I had muted my GPS because you know how annoying it is.
you have 100 meters and you should make a left turn.
I don't need that to go over there. I'm running a conference call. I don't need that going on. Going along at 70, 80 miles, left-hand lane, happen to glance at the GPS. You should be turning now. Well, I'm an engineer. My GPS is telling me I should turn. Now, I'm driving a Honda Accord. If you don't know, a Honda Accord is a fine car. Highly reliable, very rugged, all very good. But a Honda Accord is not a European performance sedan. So when you ask it to make a right-hand turn at 70 or 80 miles an hour, to make the exit, it's going to try very, very hard. But it's not quite going to be able to make it. You know that shiny metal stuff they put on like exits and stuff like that? Guess what it's there for? This particular day was there for me. Man, they got like 4x4 pieces of wood behind it. I mean, that stuff's solid stuff. You know, I thought that was very interesting as the big V appeared in my trunk there. It was like a hood engine place. It was like, wow. You know, crashes are so loud. I was just, I walked away. I was fine. Not a problem whatsoever. Everything good for me. That car, that was a $17,000 mistake that taught me that I cannot multitask. Now, as I told my family, well, I could probably multitask 2 things, but apparently 3 things. Okay, whatever. I learned I cannot multitask. When you're giving a presentation and you put a slide up that has a lot of information on it that requires reading or an analysis or something like that, you're asking your audience to pay attention to the slide and pay attention to you at the same time, and guess what? Either you or the slide's going to lose on that one. So don't do it. Your slide's reason for being is to complement you as the presenter. So just put enough information to emphasize the point that you're making and go on. If you have really detailed technical information that your audience has to have, give it to them in a handout, and give them the handout after your presentation so that you can hold on to their attention during the presentation. All right. So, you know, during a presentation, we come up with fantastic graphics like this, right? We put together blocks and connect lines and do all that sort of stuff like that. And this is reasonable. So we're talking about how we're going to fix the engineering department, and maybe we'd use something like this. Any photographers in here? Anybody do photography? You do photography? You know about the rule of thirds? Have you ever heard it? Okay. Photographers know all about the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is actually pretty cool once you know about it. So here's the scoop. Rule of thirds says you can take 2 horizontal lines and 2 vertical lines and divide up any scene into 9 blocks. Now, in that scene, those lines are really important. You can line things up in the scene with the lines, and that's where your audience's eyes go. Where the lines intersect, ironically, are called PowerPoints. And that's where your audience attention is always going to go. What this means for you, oh my slide creators, is that you never start with a blank slide. You always have this rule of thirds grid laid over the slide before you put anything on it. So when you're building your slides, what you really want to do is treat the lines with respect and treat the PowerPoints with double respect. If that's where you want to draw your audience's attention, make sure you place things there. Okay? People aren't going to know why your slides are so good, but you will. Because you will have used what the photographers call the rule of thirds. 3-3-3, 3-3-3. It's a really powerful tool. Great. I have this grid pattern in PowerPoint. I just lay it over everything before I start to make a slide. And then I just build around the horizontal and vertical lines, line things up with that, and then also build around the PowerPoints. It's great. It's a little secret. Don't tell anybody. All right. Demonstrations. Who's this guy? Okay. The wealthiest man in America. Fantastic. And what's on the screen behind him?
MS-DOS.
It's 98. So I think it's Windows NT going belly up. Is that a blue screen of death? So wait a minute. Let me understand this. The richest man in the world is given a demo, and it went belly up on him. Well, damn it. If he can't do it, what hope is there for the rest of us, right? I hate demos because they're a level of variability in a presentation I can't control. If it goes bad, I'm sort of screwed, right? So I really don't like to give demos during a presentation. Oftentimes what I'll do, if I'm doing some software, I'll take a screenshot, right? And then I'll present the screenshot and maybe put some arrows and stuff like that. I don't like to do live software demos and stuff like that. But even I admit that at some point in time, sometimes it's actually necessary to give a live demo of something. And so if that's true, then that's fine. However, I will tell you, during my career, I have sat through so many demonstrations of software where they showed me how to create a user account. I'm like, no, don't. I don't care. It's really not that terribly important. You know, there's a zillion parts to whatever's being demonstrated, and they are hell-bent to show me everything that it does. And in the audience, I'm like, oh my God, no, stop it, right? All I really care about is one or two things. So what I'm saying is, if you find yourself in a situation where you have to demonstrate something, think about your audience, think about the thing that you're demonstrating, and say, listen, what are the one or two things that I can show them that they'll actually remember, that they actually really care about? Focus on that as part of your demonstration, and then wrap it up and walk away. You minimize your exposure to the variability of a demo. You can go belly. Bill Gates had problems. You can certainly have problems, right? But you also boost the possibility of your audience remembering what it was. It's like, oh, that's how I enter an expense report. Or, though, that's how I can get a report on the year-end sales figures from my department, whatever the scoop, it doesn't matter. But show them the one thing they really care about, maybe the thing they can't do today, show them how they can do it using a new tool, whatever the scoop is. And they will actually remember that as opposed to trying to show them how to create new user accounts. All right. Now, you never want to walk into actually delivering a presentation cold. You always want to rehearse it. Although I will grant you there are times in life when at 1 o'clock you're told that you have an opportunity to give a presentation at 2 o'clock. Ooh, fabulous. Question is, well, why? You know, I'm pretty good at this stuff. I can probably just step in and do it. The reason that you never want to just show up and give a presentation is because the very first time you give a presentation is going to be the worst time you ever present that material. I don't care how good you are, it's still the worst time, right? You're going to stumble over your words, you're going to forget things, you're going to screw it up, you're going to do it in the wrong sequence, the slides aren't going to quite be right. Don't know, don't care. First time, raw, uncut, not so good. So you want to do that quietly off by yourself, okay? And then move on. Of course, once you get beyond that, the question is, how many times should you practice a presentation before you actually give it? Classic question. I hear it all the time. People ask me all the time. Turns out the answer is 7. Is there anything magic about 7? Not really. But you want a number? I'll give you a number. It's 7. Let me explain to you why 7 works. So obviously number 1 is almost throwaway. You got to do it just to do it. 2 and 3 and maybe a little bit of 4, you're working on your wording, and what you're working on most importantly is your transitions. So in our little presentation to the department, we're talking about the way the engineering department is today, and we're talking about the problems in the engineering department. We're going to have to sort of transition between those two ideas, and what we want to do is do that as smoothly as possible. We can't just do a hard boom, and then all of a sudden we start talking about something else, right? So and then after that, that was 2, 3, 4. After that, you get to like 5 and 6. 5 and 6, you start working on things like timing, trying to fit it into the amount of time that you're going to have available. And you also start working on your conclusion, because ultimately the conclusion, how you wrap your presentation up, is going to be the most important thing. Man, you went through the effort, right? You had your opening, you had your middle. Now let's make sure that your conclusion has sort of the punch. Maybe the 7th time you give it, it's your end-to-end run-through. You're making sure that all the pieces sort of stick together, and you're making sure that you feel confident giving the information. Get that taken care of, you're done. You're squared away. You can continue to practice it as many times as you want, but really it's going to be diminishing returns after the 7th. So if there is a big presentation that you have to give in front of the chairman or the board or whatever the scoop is, venture capitalists, yay, okay, not a problem. Practice it 7 times and you're squared. You're taken care of. That's as good as you're going to get, and then move on and focus on other stuff that you're going to work on. All right, now we come to the presentation. Dun, dun, dun. And this is what it's all about, right? This is what we've been working on getting towards. Not a problem with that whatsoever. Let's see how we're going to do this. Well, here's an interesting point. So when you're giving a presentation, you're standing up here, effectively naked. It's just you, right? well, how is your audience going to pick up on what you're saying? You would think it's your words. I wrote the speech out, I memorized how to give the speech, now I'm talking to you, you're hearing my words, and that's the speech. You know, it's interesting, it turns out that's not really quite the whole story. And there's a little controversy over this, but there were some studies done at one point in time, and they pointed out that your words, your tone, and your body language, all three of those work together to communicate the message to your audience. What the split up? I think there's a little bit of jury out on that one. But what's interesting is tone and body language definitely do play a large role in what your audience is picking up and what they're going to remember after you're done. Your words, they're important, but how important are they? All right, what's it going to take to get through, crack through the head of your audience and get in there and actually make an impact? You know, everybody stand here, go like this, and say, thank you. For the next 2 hours, we will be talking about the 401k program. And, you know, definitely there's a huge difference between that and, hey, welcome to the 401k discussion. You're broke now. Let's see what we can do about it. Right? You know, obviously two different types of things, and different things are going to get through to you. Right? So that's a key thing to remember. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm spending a lot of time thinking about my voice. But when you're giving a presentation, the most powerful tool that you have is your voice. So now it's time to spend a little bit of time thinking about it. Turns out your voice has 5 different characteristics to it, and you have complete control over all 5 characteristics. The first one is pitch. And pitch can go very high.
Also can go very low.
Okay? Doesn't matter. We all speak in different pitches, and that's perfectly okay. But when you're giving a presentation, you don't want to spend the whole speech speaking in given pitch. You want to vary your pitch. Remember, your audience has a short little span of attention. If you start talking in a monotone, they're whipping out the iPhone and doing something more interesting than listening to you. Okay, pace. How fast should I speak? I've got 40 slides in 10 minutes. Brace yourself. We're going to make it through this. Okay, so first off, if you find yourself with too many slides and too little time, throw away the first half of your presentation. Don't try and cram all those slides into a limited time. It's not going to work. Or even if you can cram all the slides in, nobody's going to walk away knowing what the hell you're talking about, right? So never try and cram it in. Pace. Here's how we do this, okay? Treat with respect the commas and periods in what you're saying. So the way you should do it when you're giving a presentation is start to talk and continue to talk until you hit a comma. And when you hit a comma, stop. And then start to talk again. And when you hit a period, stop for a little longer. And then start again. What you don't want to do is break up what you're saying in an unnatural way, because your audience will become angry. Okay? So use your commas, use your periods. That's your pauses. Another important thing that a lot of times that speakers forget is that commas and periods are very important because it allows your audience to catch up with you. Remember, you're up here talking and they're listening, but then they also have to process what you said. Oh, how interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way. You know? So if you use pauses for commas and periods, it gives your audience a chance to have it sort of sink in. They go, okay, I understand that. I wonder where he or she is going with this. And they catch up with you, and then they're on board. Tone. A couple different ways to look at tone. There's the Marilyn Monroe tone, Mr. President, sir. And then there's more of a brass. Hear that A in brass? You know anybody who talks with that kind of hard A? Maybe from New York. Okay? Two different sort of extremes on that one. Look, we all talk the way we talk. The key thing is if you have either one of those tones in how you speak, just don't have it in there all the time. Okay? That's the key thing. Turns out that whispering is more damaging or harder on your vocal cords than yelling is. And so if you're talking in a raspy Marilyn Monroe type of deal, it's really beating the heck out of your vocal cords. Melody, we actually as human beings easily can cover 3 octaves. Who was it? Whitney Houston could cover like 5 or something. But normal people can cover about 3. And that goes all the way from the very low to all the way up to the very high. I guess I did that wrong. Low to high. Okay, there we go. That sounds a lot better, okay? Here's the key thing. Most of us speak in a single tone all the time. It's the same tone. You had a piano, you could ding, 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 ding. It would be the exact same tone all the time. You've got 37 pitches. Use them. Okay. Oh, and here's the other thing. A lot of us have a tendency to go down at the end of the sentence. The generator will be online by the end of the month, and we'll be able to activate it then. What we'll be doing is talking to Tico, making sure we have enough power so we'll be able to turn it on when we're done with the project. Okay? What happens is when you go down at the end of a sentence, your audience is listening and going, oh great, he's done. I don't have to listen anymore. Right? So what do you want to do? You want to hit it on a steady level, or you can go up. At the end of the month, we'll be ready to go online with the project. We'll be able to talk to Tico, get them to hook it up. So what you want to do is pick it up, or at least talk as a steady. Don't go down. Because if you go down, your audience is going, great, he's done with whatever he's saying. Now I can go ahead and focus on something else. Volume. We're supposed to speak as though people are 10 feet away from us. Could you come up here? You come up. So let's see how we're going to do this. Hang on just a second here. Let's come over here. So I'm going to come over here. You stand right here. Okay. Let's do this right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is basically it. Hi, how's your day been so far?
This has been pretty good. How about yours?
It's been pretty good. So what are you going to do tomorrow?
Going to work.
Okay. What do you have for breakfast?
Coffee.
Coffee. That's it? Just coffee?
Coffee and sugar.
Oh,
Mostly
well, that
sugar.
makes it a lot better. Okay, that's fantastic. I'm sure the food pyramid we're talking about. Can you guys hear him?
Yes.
Okay, so he's actually doing a pretty good job, isn't he? Okay, go sit down. 10 feet. When you talk, you should be looking for 10 feet out, being able to hear from you. And that's not yelling. When you speak 10 feet out, what happens is that just becomes the zone in which you're heard, which is good. And that works very, very well for presentations. That's not yelling, not too loud, but it's also not whispering, not too soft. Think, 10 feet out, can somebody hear what I'm saying? And if the answer is yes, then congratulations, you're speaking it really loud. All right. I was thinking about making you guys stand up for this, but I'm not going to make you do it. So here's what I want you guys to do. I want everybody to take in a big breath. So draw in a big breath. Now let the breath out. All right, that's how you do it. All right, sort of make sure. So here's an interesting thing. When you're giving a speech, the reason that people can hear you is because your vocal cords are doing what they do. And they're basically little reeds that go back and forth as the air goes in and out. Okay? You can run out of breath, and also you can bang up your vocal cords if they dry out. Okay? You don't want that to happen. A lot of being a successful speaker has to do with knowing how to breathe. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to pretend like there's a balloon in your belly, okay? And I want you to breathe in through your nose, and I want to push it out through your mouth. So go ahead. Got it? As a speaker, that's the way you want to breathe. Let me tell you why. As the air comes in through your nose, it goes through a series of filters. And those filters actually moisten the air as it comes in. Hey, moist air, that's good. That means as it's going out, you're going to have moist air blowing over your vocal cords, which means you're not going to be drying them out. You've heard speakers who've all of a sudden had to go for the water and they've been coughing and all that sort of stuff. Like, you don't want that to happen because it distracts from what you're doing, especially if they get all raspy about halfway through, right? If you're giving an hour-long presentation, you can run into problems very, very quickly on this sort of stuff. What's also interesting is, as far as volume, I want you to do the breathing thing again, and I want you to put your hand on your stomach and feel what's happening in your stomach. So in through the nose, blow up the balloon, and then push it out to the mouth. So what you should have felt was your stomach got large, and then it got small. How quickly your stomach gets small determines how much volume you're projecting. If it gets small very quickly, you're broadcasting with a lot of volume. If it gets small slower, you're speaking at a lower volume. You control your volume. So you can kick it up a notch or you can take it down a notch depending on what you're doing at any point in time. You're in control. Pitch, pace, tone, melody, and volume. Whoever thinks about their voice, right? But congratulations, these are the buttons you have to press when you're giving a presentation. Use them all so you don't sound like that engineer It's just up there sort of my next slide and stuff like that. Use your voice, because your voice gives you the ability to vary how you sound to your audience. And if you come across as being different, last minute from this minute from the next minute, your audience is going to pay attention. Okay? You're entertaining them, yes, not as a cartoon character, but you are entertaining them, and they will continue to listen. And that's the key to a successful presentation. So who here has ever been to a comedy club? Okay, great. So you went to the comedy club, and there's probably some sort of headline act, somebody. You went in, you sat down, 2-drink minimum, thank you very much, sat at your table, and the person that you came to see came out on stage, right? What happens at a comedy club? Who comes out first? Opener. The warm-up act, right? Are they always perfect? Are they really good? No. So what's the purpose of a warm-up act at a comedy club? Why are they there?
That line look funny.
To warm up the audience.
To warm up the audience. To get us to do what?
Relax.
Buy more drinks.
Relax and start to laugh, right? I mean, after a long day at work, I'm not really in a laughing mood, right? I think it'd be pretty funny if I see that warm-up guy bombing, though. His day's worse than mine. Hot diggity. I'm on board for that one. Woo! Bring it on. So yeah, no. So the purpose of a warm-up act is to get you laughing. So he goes up and he does a good job or a bad job, doesn't matter, and then he's off, and then your headliner comes out, right? And you're already warm. Man, the first thing out of his mouth you're laughing at, right? Because you're ready for him, and the other guy got you warmed up. Hot diggity, poof, you're good. Well, when you're giving a speech, the last thing you want to do is step out onto, in front of the room or onto the stage and hope the audience likes you. Hey. Okay? Much better way to do this is get somebody to introduce you. Okay? It could be as simple as your manager. That's okay. But man, if you could get a vice president or somebody who counts, somebody who cares about what you're talking about, to actually introduce you. This is Hank. Hank's been looking at the numbers the last couple months. I asked him to give this presentation, so I'd appreciate it if you give him your attention. There's this halo effect, right? The big man said that you were going to be presenting something of interest to the... By the way, Hank's presentation will really weigh heavily on your raise this year. You got my attention now. Go Hank, right? All right, so if you can get anybody to introduce you, that's better than just hitting the cold. If you can get somebody really important to introduce you, you've scored a home run. All of a sudden, just because of that introduction, you have the audience's attention, and they will pay attention. Now, you have to do a good job in your presentation to hold that attention. You started out strong. I went out to Las Vegas a couple of years ago for a trade show, and they had hired Billy Crystal to give like a little private performance. Hey, this is pretty cool. Now, what was interesting is, so we all got into a theater, we all sat down, and there wasn't really an opportunity to have a warm-up act. And Billy Crystal's a comedian, right? What were they going to do? What they did was they lowered a screen, and this was, I think, the previous year, Billy Crystal had hosted the Academy Awards, and they created like a little movie. What they'd done is drop Billy Crystal into a whole bunch of like famous movies, and what it was all the tough guys in the movies trying to convince him to host the Academy Awards. You know, like Clint Eastwood, I don't remember how many shots it had today. Okay, I'll do it. You know, right? You know, so it was really well done. Billy Crystal placed into movies that he was never in. But anyway, so we're watching the, you know, we're all chuckling because it was really funny. It was really, so the screen goes up, Billy Crystal comes out. We were ready for him. We had already been laughing at the little movie. When he came out, we were basically pre-warmed up. He got right into his act. We were all laughing, had a great time. So warm-up act. You don't necessarily think of your manager as being your warm-up act, but you should. Never give a presentation unless somebody's introduced you, given a reason for you being there, and then you can take their credibility, plant yourself, and you're off and running. All right, every single presentation that you give is an opportunity to change, okay? You learn from every presentation that you give. Now the question is, how are you going to learn? Well, you know, probably the best thing that you can do, well, there's two things actually, is have a videotape of your presentation. Congratulations, we all have cell phones. Cell phones do a great job of videotaping. Actually, they do a crappy job of videotaping. But anyway, you can get a videotape of your presentation because somebody has a cell phone. And it's a good idea to get the videotape and then to watch it. As painful as that is, take a look at that actual presentation and figure out what you did right and what you did wrong. An even better thing to do is to have a ringer. Have somebody in the audience, a friend of yours, watch really what you want that friend to do is answer 2 questions. And what's interesting is you'll see that question on the same survey I asked you to fill out here tonight. The first question is, hey, what did you do right? What had everybody nodding or agreeing with you? What captured everybody's attention? And the second question is, hey, if you had to sit through me giving this presentation again, what would you want me to do different? And those 2 questions seem to sort of encapsulate the most important stuff. What needs to change and what needs to stay the same. Now, you may never give that presentation again. That's perfectly okay. But you will give other presentations in the future. And because of that, what you want to do is learn from every presentation that you give and take that information and apply it to what you're going to do next. Now, we talked about putting this presentation together for your boss so you can present it to all the managers. Let's sort of take a look and see if we've hit the key thing of convincing the company there's a problem, offering a solution, and getting agreement on the next steps. What would that presentation look like? We had talked about the cover slide. Remember, it's sort of a throwaway. We put it up on the board, everyone's coming in, they're all sitting down and getting ready to hear what you have to say. The next thing they could show is something like this. And this is actually sort of important. See, I have a lot of things to talk about when I'm going to talk about the engineering department today. But what I don't want to do is put up a whole slide of bullets. Because remember, I'm the star of the show. I don't want you reading this. So instead of what I'm going to do is put up this, and it's just more of a little sort of placeholder, outsourcing, value of engineering costs. I can talk about each one of those blocks. And you can see that they're sort of weighing down on the car that's being crushed. And it's just a little bit of humor, right? Get them to smile, laugh, whatever it is. But I'm keeping my audience with me. Okay? When I go on to the next slide, it's some sort of diagram like this, sort of showing the flow of information through the department. Now remember, we never start out with just a blank sheet of paper. We always start out with our rule of 3s. And we've got our PowerPoints, and you can see that we lined up that image with the most important thing, where we want our audience's eyes to go. Because those are the key things that we're trying to show them. And we lined up the arrows with the vertical lines to make sure that we get their eyes traveling from the bottom of the screen up. And then we go on to this, and this will probably be like our last slide, right? So we got like a graphic sort of showing our Six Sigma stuff, and then we got a bunch of questions at the bottom. And arguably, this is the slide that we're going to leave up when the groups start to discuss. I don't disagree. We don't have enough funding to, people start talking among themselves. But these questions will be there. And so they can glance up there and go, oh, that's a good point, because our day-to-day engineering operations won't be able to whatever. Don't even care. But it's up there as a sort of a placeholder to stir up the rest of the discussion. Okay? That's an okay engineering discussion, right? That would achieve your goals. Your boss would be pleased. You'd be promoted overnight. Fantastic. All right. So look, you can continue to give presentations the way you're doing today, the way every engineer gives their presentations, okay? Which is sort of too much information, too dry, not really focused, not really built very well, stuff like that. But your career won't go where you want it to. We've shared with you tonight a bunch of interesting ideas, a bunch of key points, a bunch of interesting ways you can actually go about building an effective engineering presentation and then giving it in a way that will actually result in what you want to have happening. Okay? Take these ideas that I've shared with you tonight, apply them to the next presentation that you're going to go ahead and give, and see what the results are. I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised. If you don't change, I introduce you to the dodo bird, which is now extinct, and we don't want that to happen to you. You've got fantastic ideas inside of yourself. They deserve to be shared with as many people as possible, and becoming effective at giving public presentations is the key way to do that. Now, last slide in my deck tonight, learning never stops. You're engineers, you know that. I have a blog that I run, it's called theaccidentalcommunicator.com. Okay? It's a blog just filled with tips on public speaking. Okay? There's 1,001 little details to how you can become better and better and better at public speaking. The Accidental Communicator has it. It also has a newsletter. Sign up for the newsletter. You get it once a month from me. Tons of tips, tons of ways to get better. This is the kind of thing that doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. Also, if you're not a member of Toastmasters, give it some thought. Toastmasters is just dedicated to helping their members become better public speakers. It's done in a club atmosphere. So basically, you know everybody that you're speaking to. It gives you practice. It gives you the opportunity to get up in front of a bunch of people, give a presentation. They give you immediate feedback on how you're doing. It allows you to get better very, very quickly. It's something to consider. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that's it. Thank you so much for your time tonight.